perhaps you can introduce.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Yeah, very good. Do you want to introduce yourself to the audience, give them some background?
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. I am Lauren. And for anyone who doesn't know me, I am a principal consultant at Wiser Elite. And we are a software sales recruitment business that are changing the way people think about sales. I'm also a co-founder of a community that we have in the UK called Making Moves, which is for women in tech sales, which I know you know all about, Janice, being part of our recent Making Movements Insights pack, which I can share some pieces from there, but feel very grateful to have been asked to be on here today with you, Janice, and hello everyone.
Well, we've got lots to get through. There's many areas that we want to discuss, but please do, as I say, if you've got any questions, make sure that you put them in the comments and we'll see them and do our best to answer your questions. So I remember when I was moderating Women in Sales panel at the Sales Innovation Expo, and it was the first time that they've done it, and it was a brilliant audience full of men and women, our allies. And when we came to the point where we were asking for the audience questions, the man got up and he, was wagging his finger and saying, I've tried to recruit women into my sales roles, and either I can't recruit them, or they recruit and they don't stay. And to the women on the panel, what are you going to do about it? Pointing the finger. And I took the mic and I said, well, actually, it's about what we are going to do. We didn't create the problem as women up on stage. So we're not going to be resolving the problem. It's not our fault. But actually, it's the industry that needs to change. So you need to look at what are you doing and what can you do. But one of the quickest way of recruiting more women into sales is if you have a sales leader, a female sales leader, then they will naturally recruit more women and a diverse team below them. Because if, as Laurie Richardson, who we both know, if you can't see it, you can't be it. See it, be it. And that is not an easy thing to do, to recruit a female sales leader. But if you do the hardest things first, then the rest will flow. So in order to kind of just explore this question about breaking barriers to entry and then leveling the challenges of women face in entering and thriving in the sales role, what's your perspective, Lauren?
Sure. And Janice, I couldn't agree more with you with what you said there. I think representation matters. And if you can't see yourself on the leadership team and represented on the leadership team, then you're going to assume that that's probably a business where women aren't going to thrive. So having that is really key. But also, I think, particularly for software sales, there are a lot of barriers to entry. And I definitely think with some businesses, it's like you need to come from a top university, you need to have already sold some type of tech before you go into actual software tech sales. And there just seems to be so many barriers that it's actually diluting the amount of female talent that you can get through the door. So already having so many guards to entry just for any entry role for sales roles, whether you're female or male, it can be really difficult. So I think first of all, it's opening that up a little bit. It's speaking to companies that when they are like, we need more female talent, and it's like, okay, but let's try and not ask for someone from, if for example, UK, from a Russell Group university that has already sold. Like, have you thought about looking at career changers, people who are in hospitality, even teaching backgrounds that have done well, and using that as a way of bringing in more female talent, I think is particularly important. And what you said there about looking at it as, it's not that women don't want to apply to your business because they don't like you, or do you know what I mean? It's like what you were saying, we all are at fault for letting in female talent, and the way that we can do that and work on that is by looking at how we can attract more women to the business, and doing things like, I know that you've had people speak about it on here before, Janice, about job descriptions and just looking at how you can appeal to women, as opposed to just, I've just put an application on LinkedIn and no one's applying to it.
It's interesting that, you know, you go to these companies and you look on their website, and, you know, they sales leaders will talk to me about wanting to attract more women, and then you look on the website and it's all white men who are in the leadership board.
Yeah.
Non-executive director, that's an easy one. Let's plonk a few women on there. That's, now we're diverse. It's like,
yeah.
really? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've got to walk the walk and you've got to talk the talk, really. So you may not now look like you want to be. So you've got to be talking and integrating with more people that you would like to attract, and be seen with more companies and in more groups, or, you know, reaching out a lot further to make sure that you're seen and you're talking to a diverse group of people. Because you may not have that in your company, but actually, if you're not even in that environment, then you're never going to be considered someone or an organization that is open to having a diverse workforce.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, look, there are some businesses that have just grown the last couple of years and it's just been white males and that's all that they've attracted. And then now it's great that they're turning around and addressing the problem and going, hey, no, we need more women in our business. We know, we've looked at the data, it means that we're going to be more successful. So looking back and saying, how can we do that, I think is great. But it's also taking the extra mile. Like, are you going to universities and speaking to younger crowds? Are you sponsoring communities that are out there to get your name out there, to show that you are interested in making a change? And are you bringing in like women advisors to help you on how you should best attract women to your business, and taking that extra mile, as opposed to maybe just coming to recruiters like myself and just going, can you get me a few more female CVs? Because it's like, no, that's not how it works. It's not like I'm just going to try and find you a load of women and there you go and you'll hire them. Like, what are you doing internally? And I think that's the main thing here. And I know with and not to plug our Making Movements Insights pack, but one thing that we have really stressed on the last couple of years, and I say we, but it's more the Making Moves team, Zara, Izzy, Nush and Mel, who've put together a pack looking at how businesses can better attract, report and support and retain women, and also other resources like Laurie's book, She Sells, and Heidi's Heels to Deals. And it's like there are actually resources out there that you can use. So just telling people that you can't attract more women and it's their fault is not enough, when there's so much out there that you can use to do so.
Yeah. And, you know, like, even down to, if you're really serious about this, even down to looking at your own supply chain, you know, if you're bringing in trainers, speakers, consultants, you know, everyone that's touching your organization, and they're still white male, you know, so it's not just about recruiting a SDR, you know, diverse. It's actually about everything you're doing in the organization. Because people talk, they have sisters and cousins and all of that. You have got to be seen to be serious about this and walk the walk and talk the talk. So the people that you're bringing into your organization, do they look more like the typical white male, or are you outreaching to a wider source of suppliers that are coming into your organization, so that when you're talking about it, you're a little bit more experienced about a wider diversity of people? And, you know, I have access to a database that's been collected over 25 years. It's been assessing salespeople from sales leader, you know, down to SDR, sales support managers, all of that. So there's 2.4 million assessments of salespeople. Now, I know assessments, they do personality tests, they do behavioral tests, or all of that. None of these are sales specific. So it's like saying just because you're direct or you're extrovert, you're going to be good at sales. They adapt them, but it's complete rubbish. There's no correlation in those assessments unless it's verified and predictive on the job, sales specific. Then it isn't going to tell you, is this a great person to work in sales? But the reason why, Lauren, I absolutely love this as a resource is that what I tell companies that now you have this filter that is not biased, unlike individuals. There's 20 biases in recruitment, but is not biased, and you can put everyone. They just click on a link and they do an assessment, and then that is benchmarked against the best for your industry in your country. And so it means then they're either recommended or not, or you can do it on your existing sales team to find the gaps. But it means that it's able to predict on the job, is this person going to be in the top quartile within the year? So I encourage companies, do not think, can they sell? Will they sell? What they've done before? What you need to do is throw it as a much wider pool, because the filter does the job, not you, not the bias. The filter does the job of telling you if they're recommended or not, based upon, 2.34 million other assessments. So you don't really need to second guess yourself about, is this person going to work out? Based on all of this data.
Yeah. And it's funny actually, because when I've spoken to a lot of female leaders and spoken to people who get into sales, most people are like, I've fallen into it, or I met someone at a wedding, or I was working a shift in a bar as a waiter and someone came up to me, a waitress, sorry, and have you ever thought of doing sales? And like, that's how most people get into these roles anyway. So the fact that there are now just like all of these barriers are in place just doesn't make sense when you speak to most of the leaders and it ends up that they just fell into it anyway. It's bonkers.
Yeah, and they may be great at it. So no one used the bias and all these things to second guess, to stop all the barriers that are in place. They just got into it and they found they were great at it. And then they found they loved it. There's people in sales that have a real passion. They really want to help their customers. They're absolutely perfect. And when you look at it, if you looked at their CVs, you would never recruit them. They would never get through now. So I think that's a brilliant point, Lauren.
Yeah, thank you.
So, okay, let's move on to retention, the realities of retention. There's so much to discuss there. And Pam, thank you very much. Pam has said, yes. She absolutely loves what we're talking about. So thank you very much for your comments, Pam. Keep them coming for those of you out there. We absolutely love to hear from you. So retention realities. What are the nuances, Lauren, of recruiting women in sales?
Sorry.
What are the nuances of recruiting women in sales? Retaining, not recruiting, retaining, women in sales, retention.
Yeah, sure. I think there are a lot of things that you need to look at retaining women, and I think obviously supporting them in their roles is key, but also we need to look at things like menopause and also maternity, because that is naturally what women go through. I think sometimes it's family planning, not everybody, but that can be a top of a lot of women's lists, but also particularly menopause, because that's something as women we always go through, and perimenopause as well. So it's also like setting up a working environment where women can feel safe and flexible and have those key things. I think that's really important for retaining women, and just feeling like they're in an environment where they feel heard, where they have a seat at the table. And yeah, I think those points are really, really key. I read recently, I think it was in like McKinsey and Company in one of their reports, and they said particularly in the US, it's like the highest rate that women have been leaving the workforce. Women leavers have been leaving corporate America, in years, which is insane. And we want to keep more of those women leaders in place for the representation because of how much that matters. But also it was that women are leaving the workforce to go on and be entrepreneurs, and they're still ambitious. It's not that they're leaving the workforce because they've had enough. It's more because they see where they're not recognized and not supported, so they go somewhere else and they start something up on their own, which is great. But also it means that that doesn't give room for diversity within companies, because if all of these tech companies are having these female leaders and they're leaving and going on to do other things and going outside of tech and outside of sales, then that doesn't give young talent any hope, because they can't see that above. That I kind of went off on a tangent to something else there, but I think that's key, like that it's such an important thing to retain female staff. And I know a lot of companies that we work with have their own women in sales groups within the business, like WhatsApp groups, and when people go and sit down and have conversations about what they can be doing better as a business, are really great ways to help retain women. But yeah, those are like the key things, I would say.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with you. I think you've got to have transparent policies and pay as well. You know, and I know there's differences in the UK and the US as to, you know, how transparent you can really be. But also, do you know what? Why don't we ask women? Why don't we ask women? And then once we ask and we listen, have the respect to do. Have to respect to do it, because you know what? When you have a workforce that is flexible, that's able to work with the diversity of needs of the people, then and particularly when you recruit women, they stay longer, their tenure is longer, consistency in terms of the customers rather being handed over to new people all the time. And it's just really good for your business. So why don't we just ask our workforce what they want? What will keep them here? What's happy? What do we need to do? And start putting those things in place. So it's just really transparent. We can do this year, and we're going to work on that next year. We are, as you say, they want to feel heard. So more companies need to be doing this and thinking that they, rather than thinking they know at the top what is going to work and then passing it down, let's actually start from, you know, ground roots and work up in terms of transparent policies and what people really would like to happen in their organization. Then they're going to stay longer, as you say.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's key when looking at, I mean, not to just keep bringing the conversation back to family planning, but I know that is a lot of a reason as to why people and well, women, sorry, would leave businesses, is because they need to go away and have a family, and that's something that they want, and they feel like they're not able to return to work. I think, I know in the US, I think it's about 43% of women leave the workforce after having children, and it's 40% in the UK. And that just shows that businesses aren't making the working environment flexible enough, or making women feel like they can return to work and do two things at once. Like, women that have a feeling like they have to quit, and you have to decide, do I be a successful woman in my career, or do I go away and have a family? And it's like, why can't you have both? So it's more about companies looking into that and seeing how they can support, I think is truly key. And then not just making it all about family planning. And when we're discussing about menopause as well, it's like looking and understand what women are going through, and knowing that we go through different symptoms of brain fog or heightened emotions, that sometimes on certain days we don't want to have to take that one-to-one sit down or have a like pitch meeting or things like that. We need to look at how we frame our calendars and our time, so we can feel that we can bring our best selves to work every day. But we can only do that by having a business that is open, that asks us what we want, that asks us what we need. They're able to sit and plan with us and truly make us feel wanted and as we've said, heard.
I think certainly, I've been through the menopause, and I remember thinking I didn't want to go on stage. I had to I sweat like a God knows what and everything like that. And it's just, and I got off lightly compared to some of my female friends, but oh my gosh, like, can you imagine working with, having a kind of a male boss that has no empathy or understanding, to what women go through and how difficult it is. Now, remember, these women are, you've reached a certain age, you've got all of that experience and knowledge, they're probably the best in the business, and then this happens to them, they lose their confidence, and then they're working with someone that has no concept of what they're going through. I mean, things are difficult enough. No wonder so many women, women in sales, and as particularly my colleagues in America, we talk about this all the time. The numbers that are leaving is unbelievable. And I would just like to remind the listeners on this call the reason why this is such an important subject, and the reason why we're really encouraging leaders to change their organizations. And if AMANY did some research, and it said that the majority of buyers, not sellers, buyers are below the age of 30 in the B2B space. Wow. And the majority of buyers that are currently 75% of B2B buyers that buy over £100,000 worth of product service are male. And it guarantees within the next 5 to 10 years, that's going to swap around. So that 20, 30-year-old, 25-year-old, 5-10 years is going to be running the buying group. And so it'll be 75% of them that are women. So that means if your workforce does not reflect your sales force does not reflect the buyers that are they're selling to, then there's a real disconnect there. So that alone, not just the right thing to do, but that alone should tell you need to start putting things in place now. So that if your SDRs are not 75%, that some of them will then graduate to be sales leaders that's going to reflect those buyers in 5 to 10 years' time, you're at a real disadvantage. You're losing competitive advantage. You need to be planning for that now.
Yeah, I'm going to shout about that a little bit more, I think, Janice, because I think that might scare a few people, which it needs to, because it's important.
Okay, let's talk about inclusive recruitment and shifting the paradigm. So it's not just about diversity, but really implementing inclusive hiring practices.
Yeah, I think this is absolutely crucial, and I know you've had some women talk on here before, Lauren and Laurie, and I think it's having women in the room for interviews, first of all, but also it's not just having someone from HR or the typical roles that we put women in tech, and it's being able to show that representation, but also I think through the decision process as well. It's so important to have women in seat and on the decision making side of things to help women get through. I think it's so important. If I and just from, I know that if I send a candidate to a company and they're going through the interview process and it's a woman and they've told me that they are seeking a business where they're going to feel included, like, I need to make sure that business is going to have a woman on the team or someone that's going to make them feel like this is the type of business that they're going to work for. Otherwise they're just solely not going to want it. Like, that's what's needed. So I think that's really, really important. Like, it's not just what you advertise about your business, it's also who's in the room, who's interviewing. I've heard stories from candidates that I've worked with who felt like they are able to open up about when they are wanting a family in the future or what their goals are in interviews with women leaders or women interviewers, but when it comes to men they don't feel as comfortable. So it's even things about, like, they're completely changing their interview style and feeling they can bring their true self to the interview process. And I think that is just, it's key to want women to be excited about your company and know that you're just not tick boxes. They can actually ask them the hard questions, like, do you feel like you're being heard in this business? Like, would you say that this is a great place to work as a woman? And getting that advice as well, I think, is really key.
I mean, I think you've summed it up beautifully here, and Pam saying yes, that we need the right support, and women are better at the job. So thank you for that, Pam.
Yes, love
that. Yeah, I absolutely love that. Yeah, and it's interesting that companies don't always think how important that is. And it goes back to the example I gave that, do the hardest thing, recruit a female sales leader, and then everyone else, can see it and be it. And in the interview process, they will be interviewing, they will feel comfortable to be asked the question, because that female sales leader probably knows the answer because they've asked for the policy themselves.
Yeah.
Whereas a man might not feel comfortable talking about menopause and what's in place for it. They should, if they want to be a leader, if they want to be a manager. If you're not comfortable talking about those things, you need to be questioning how you are coaching and mentoring the people below you. You are not comfortable having those types of conversations. I mean, we're all adults here. We're real people. We should be able to having conversation about periods and all of that. And if you can't, you probably need to go for some coaching yourself.
Yeah. No.
But yeah, we should be comfortable talking about all of these things. It's just so normal.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think it is better, like the amount of companies that I am seeing, software companies that mention that they have things like period leave and menopause leave, or even calling them like mental well-being days that you can use to take off without having to always say, like, I'm taking a period day, by the way, because that's also something that you don't always want to have to disclose, which are really key. But I think more businesses should be doing that in order to attract the right talent, because it's something that I know that if I were to be looking for something and someone had that in place, I would feel respected and heard before I'd even spoken to a company. And I think that's a lot of businesses are still missing the trick on that one.
I think you're absolutely right. It's been transparent, it's been really open, so it's not a big deal. Then people are able to do their best and be their best in an environment where they feel they belong and they feel they've been heard. Thank you, Pam. Topical right now about Ramadan. That's really interesting. Yes. Yeah. Very, very, very great point. Thank you, Pam. Right. Okay. So I have to thank my fabulous guests for wonderful conversation. I've really I always enjoy talking to Lauren. I would like to remind everyone that I'm going away to Japan. Ooh. So a chill break, and I've got a conversation about AI and continue to answer your questions. Thank you so much for joining us on this session of Breaking Barriers, Navigating Diverse Recruitment in Sales. Really enjoyed the conversation with you, Lauren. Thank you so much for being a guest and sharing your expert knowledge. I've really, really enjoyed it. So thank you. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.